Welcome along to a very special Film Talk. I'm Richard Edwards, and I'm delighted to say we're joined by the totally amazing, biggest film buff in the world, Mr. Mark Priest. Mark, welcome to Film Talk.
Thank you very much, Richard. It's great to be back.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to see you again. And today we are looking at, I know it's one of your favourite films, one of my absolute all-time favourite films. It is widely regarded as the world's greatest war film. We're looking at Where Eagles Dare, starring Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood, and directed by Brian Hutton.
Here he is, in a town called Werfen, at the Schloss Adler, the Castle of the Eagles. And believe me, it's well named, because only an eagle can get to it.
Where Eagles Dare, whichever part of Where Eagles Dare, just a tiny short clip, but whatever you see of that film, whatever you watch, it's just totally amazing. It means so much to you, this film, as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Richard. It definitely is my favourite war movie. And I've got so many to choose from as well, from Dam Busters to Longest Day to Battle of Britain. But I have to say, it's got everything in this film. I absolutely love it. I remember seeing it as a child in the 70s, not when it originally came out, but taken to the ABC cinema in Brighton with my mum. And it's stuck in my mind ever since. It's just a wonderful film, right all the way through. It's action-packed, great characters, great script. The plot is amazing by Alistair MacLean. It's just one of those films that's got everything. And it's still, even now, 50 years later, still got the quality about it that makes you happy to watch it again and again.
So Elliott, Kastner, and I think it was Jerry Gershwin was the other producer. Right. And they commissioned a number of screenplays from Alistair MacLean, who had, right from 1955 with his debut novel, HMS Ulysses, but then the follow-up novel, The Guns of Navarone. Come on.
Yes.
Another one of the greatest war films ever
absolutely.
made. What I recently discovered was that he'd become a tax exile. So he found himself, living in Switzerland. Burton had lived in Switzerland for many years too, and they actually lived very close to each other. And when Burton asked the producer, can you kind of come up with a vehicle for me where I'm actually surviving to the end of the film and actually killing off the bad guys, not being the bad guy, they approached Alistair MacLean. And although they were near neighbours, they never really got on. But he came up with the screenplay for Where Eagles Dare before he wrote the book.
Yeah, I didn't realise that until a little while ago, actually. That's quite an incredible story, actually.
Take your clothes off. Don't argue. Take your clothes off.
It's typical MacLean fare, that kind of, really, no one is whoever you think they are in these films. And there's always, and right up to the end. You were saying you were watching it.
Yes.
Even on the plane.
That's right. I remember, even to the point right at the end, even in the aeroplane, thinking, who is it? Who is it? It could have still been Richard Burton as a double cross. But of course, it was Patrick Wymark. And that left a big poignant note for me about the films. I just remember when he obviously jumps out of the plane. And it's all done very quietly. And Clint Eastwood gets up and just closes the door after he's been given the gentleman's exit, effectively. But of course, if that was today's film, if that was Tom Cruise, you'd be getting all the baddie being pushed out the door. There'd be a lot of camera angles. You'd see him falling to his doom. And this is all done very subtly. But actually, the impact is really significant.
Green on go!
Colonel Weissner, Team Security. Major von Hafen, Gestapo.
I can't believe there's anybody who's watching who doesn't know the story of Where Eagles Dare. But I mean, in summary, there's this American Brigadier General Carnaby
Jones,
who's meant to be one of the planners for the D-Day landings. His aircraft has been shot down over Germany. What the hell would someone like that have been flying over Germany for? So you'd think that's a bit suspicious from the start. Just a few miles from the Gestapo headquarters, so he's naturally going to be taken there.
Yes.
And Richard Burton plays, is it John Smith?
That's it,
an
Major
anonymous
Smith.
name.
Yes.
Major Smith.
Yes, that's right.
To lead a group of people in to get him out before he reveals secrets of the D-Day landings to the Germans. Or at least that's what you think it's about.
Well, it's a cunning plot, ultimately, by the British Secret Service to establish who the mole is in London. And I think there's a great scene in the film where somebody says, oh, this is very, very complicated. And Richard Burton says, no, to the British, it's really straightforward. I thought that just sums it up as well. They concocted this amazing story and actually made it quite believable.
Sounds like the Brits, doesn't it? I mean, there are some standout action scenes, just standout scenes all the way through.
Yes.
I mean, what are some of the key
I
moments
think
for you?
Just as an action film alone, and I'd say probably the second half of the movie, there's probably very little dialogue after the dining room scene. It's all action. And it's a roller coaster ride. It's absolutely glorious. I actually was reading a funny point that Clint Eastwood couldn't understand. He was firing all these shots. I mean, literally dozens of shots, but never reloaded once. And I think they used something like up to 20,000 rounds of blanks in the movie, which is absolutely an enormous amount of blanks, ammunition. But yes, the action, it's right from the beginning, even right where they when they land and they come onto the pistes, and you just feel that tension building. And then really, I suppose the big parts is the cable cars and the action that takes place. There's a couple of key moments, isn't there?
So Schloss Adler, as it's called in the film,
yes,
which is a castle, well named, Castle of the Eagles. So they say at the beginning of the film, and it's because you can't. It's at the top of a mountain, and you can't get to it except by cable car. It really is very, very inaccessible, which is a great place to take your prisoner you're going to interrogate, because very few people can get in. So the only way they can get there is up in a cable car. And this real life castle is in Werfen, Austria, which is where they filmed a lot of the shots for the location.
Yes.
But there's, as you say, this really fantastic and dramatic scene, or scenes as they're going into the castle, up the cable car, and actually having to come back as well.
Absolutely. Well, as you just said, the cable car where Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton jump on the top, and they're obviously going up to the castle. I actually remember thinking, this is exciting, just watching this. But then when it comes back, it's a bit further down the movie, but when it comes back and there's that fight on top of the cable car, it's extremely gritty, hard. I mean, it's quite violent, actually, even now as a movie. And then there's that great scene, which I think you definitely, I know you love. It was when Richard Burton's character jumps from one cable car to the other. It's amazing. It's amazing even now to still watch it, to think that actually happened. And a great stuntman that did that.
Alf Joint was the name of the stuntman, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. And it's an incredible stunt in itself. But unfortunately, I think he actually knocked some teeth out as well himself. That's right. When you actually see that, what you think is Richard Burton jumping across, that chap has actually just lost three of his front teeth. It's
no surprise that Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton dubbed the film Where Doubles Dare. Because of all the stunt people getting involved.
Absolutely. Well, and to be fair, you can see that in the movie. You can see the doubles come in, but actually it felt like it was pretty, the guys were doing their stuff as well. I thought Clint Eastwood in particular seemed to be doing a lot of the action himself. But I think he actually enjoyed it as well, from all accounts. It was also the other characters in the movie that really made it for me. And, some great performances there. But in particular, I do like Derren Nesbitt playing the German Gestapo Nazi.
Von Hutton.
Von Hutton, that's it, yes. He is absolutely one of the best baddies you could possibly have. And he plays it really, really well. And he just looks like a homicidal maniac. And I love the way that he obviously he's allured by the character played by Mary Earle. He obviously fancies her and obviously sets out to try and woo her. But then things start to unravel because he asks where she's from and she says she's from Düsseldorf. And of course, he knows Düsseldorf and he's starting to question her and he's starting to figure out she's not quite the person she thinks she is. He thinks she is. So I know there's a really great scene when he's walked her back to her room and he says, "Good night, Fräulein," closes the door and he turns round and you can see that look. He knows something's wrong.
I thought Mary Earle was really, really good in the film. She's comes across, I mean, she plays the character of a sort of a new kind of secret agent. You get a sense she's a new secret agent. She nervously gets a job in the castle. She goes up there. She's the one who drops the rope out the side to, once they've got up on the cable car, so they can climb up inside. And you sense this real nervousness, this total insecurity of what she's doing. But she carries that character remarkably well.
She plays the part really well. Again, the two female leads, Ingrid Pitt as well, as the barmaid, really well done. And Mary in particular, I thought she's played the parts sensitively, but actually quite tough as well, as she had to be, I guess.
And some good other character actors who you always see. I mean, Anton Diffring as the evil Nazi.
Sure, he's just, every time you saw him playing a German officer, you knew you were in for a treat, because he just always played it the way he always played it, which was a great part for him. And of course, the dining room scene is by and far, one of the most classic parts of any film, where Richard Burton reveals what they're trying to do. And it's quite mystifying.
Because it flicks from cross to double cross, back to cross again, or is that a triple cross? I'm not quite sure. But Richard Burton, the Smith character, is he British? Is he German? Then he gets evidence to prove that he's a German spy, and then he's English again. And it really, I mean, it's typical Alistair MacLean, the kind of confusion of the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could actually see Clint Eastwood. He plays it so well. He actually looks confused as well himself. And even when Richard Burton Schmidt even gets Anton Diffring to call his a major in Italy, a German major who knows him, to verify who he is. It just adds another layer of complexity to the story that's mystifying the audience, I'm sure, but actually just leads all to the tension building.
One of the other characters we must mention, a wonderful British character actor who turns up. I mean, he must have been in over 100 films. I had the honour of interviewing him backstage at a theatre in the West End many years ago. And of course, it's Michael Hordern. Broadsword.
Yes.
No, he was Danny Boy, wasn't he?
Yeah. And that's a great catch line, isn't it? Broadsword calling Danny Boy. Broadsword calling Danny Boy. It's actually, we've both used that, haven't we?
It's almost like it's a code that if you know the film, you know exactly what you're talking about.
Broadsword calling Danny Boy. Broadsword calling Danny Boy. Over.
This is Father McCree, Broadsword. What is your present position, please?
It's one of those films that has a tremendous look and feel to it, and I think it's because so much of the filming was done on real locations in Austria and in Bavaria. It just all feels, because it was authentic, it felt so wonderfully authentic in the film, and that just added so much. I think the scenery and the locations are almost a character in themselves in the telling of the story. In particular, the castle at Werfen. I mean, the cable car was also in Austria, but that was in Ibbitson, which is a slightly different location. It's interesting that the airport scenes, one of our regular viewers, Richard, his uncle was an extra in the film, would you believe?
Wow.
What a claim to fame is that. And when you look, there's a scene where they're going through the airfield, smashing up the aircraft. There's two Luftwaffe crew members who are leaping off a fighter just before the bus carrying Smith and the others smashes into it and blows it up. Well, the second person to leap off was Richard's uncle. So you can see that in this clip here.
Very good. I'd be very impressed with that.
So I think all the airport scenes afterwards, where they then get to that Junkers Ju-52 where they fly back, was at Egen im Enstal, I think, in Austria. So it's all great locations,
I've often thought, actually, because that film was only made just over 20 years after the end of the Second World War, it must have been quite odd, peculiar, I guess, for the local village to have all these, Germans turning up, all these military vehicles. It probably was quite disconcerting, I would think, at the time. It probably would be now still, but even then, it was quite relevant. And a lot of those people that lived in that time probably had been through the war themselves. So it all adds to the sort of character of the film. But going back to your point there, I do remember part of the production, they were under a lot of pressure trying to make this film. The weather was absolutely terrible. And I think they started, didn't they, the 2nd of January. And they really were up against blizzards, freezing cold, absolutely the worst conditions, and they were trying to haul great big pieces of machinery, photography, all over that part of the country, and it put a lot of pressure on them. And of course, the other thing that's just coming to mind as well is the music. Ron Goodwin's score is just a brilliant piece of music, and even now, if I just hear the main title, it just conjures up, and what I know is going to be a great film, because the music is terrific. He really was almost like the Hans Zimmer of today, and some of his classic scores for those sort of types of movie he's right up there as far as I'm concerned. Really.
Yeah, and I think for me, I also like to mention the cinematographer Arthur Ibbitson in this case, who's a master filmmaker in his own right, because it's all very well having great performances, great locations, but you have to capture amazing images too. And Arthur was a hell of a cinematographer. And the look and feel of the film, all of the crafts behind the camera came together with the costume design, production design, hair, makeup, cinematography, sound. I mean, it's all there. It's the complete package. And I think it is one of the world's greatest war movies. It probably is the greatest war movie of all time for all of the factors. Everything came together and it all worked. It worked extremely well. And that's probably why it is such a classic.
Absolutely right. I think if you had a tick box for what's required to make a successful movie, and it had it all, great, as you say, everything was just right. And actually the cast got on so well as well, didn't they? They actually really enjoyed working with each other. And so that made it a happy film. And I think Clint Eastwood in particular thought it was, he really enjoyed the parts and went on to do a couple of other war movies after that himself, because he really enjoyed that sort of character. Obviously, because he'd just been in the Westerns by then, really. So it was diversing what he was doing. It's a great film. I love it.
So, I mean, that's where Eagles Dare, without doubt, certainly in our opinion, the greatest war film of all time. I mean, it's just got everything: story, cast, production value. It all comes together to present. And it's 2.5 hours. It's not a short film, but it carries it all the way through. And like you say, it's all dialogue in the first half and constant action all the way through, but in particular in the second half. Just all the ingredients are there. And as you said before, it's something you can watch over and over again and still get tremendous enjoyment from.
Absolutely. It is the best action war movie. Full stop. It really is terrific. It's got everything that you want in a good movie, and it just happens to be Where Eagles Dare.
Do tell us what you think and leave some comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to hit that little bell icon to get a notification every time we release a new video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.